Hello, everybody, and happy day before Thanksgiving if you're here in the United States, or if you're abroad also celebrating Thanksgiving. Happy Wednesday to the rest of you. Welcome to Dan Live. We are here. As you can see, Mara is literally making our dessert for tomorrow while we're doing the show. That's just the kind of day it is.
Actually, I'm currently making bread. I can't make the pie crust because I need the food processor, and it's loud.
Okay. So, Mara's making our during dinner bread. A lot of gluten. You'll be seeing a lot of gluten on today's show,
So much
which
gluten.
is always
I
a good
recommend
thing.
if you're gluten intolerant, you might need to take some caution.
Yeah, it may come through the screen. I think that's how gluten works. It comes like through the screen, even if you're watching it. So this is a
Facts.
gluten warning for those of you that are watching at home. Also, Ben Goddard behind the scenes, pushing the buttons, doing all the things that I don't really understand. He may also hop in if we cajole him hard enough to come and say something. We were talking about the House of Gucci before we came on.
Oh,
You
yeah?
will see a review for House of Gucci right here on the channel tomorrow morning. I wanted to space out the videos a little bit. Very interesting to see some reactions to this because I feel like people are split along the Jared Leto line. And we have a cat. Is that Muffin?
Yeah, it's Muffin. Who's my
That's
baby?
Muffin.
She's my baby. All right, now I have to wash my hands again.
All kinds of fun things going on. We have a lot that we're talking about today. We are talking about Jurassic World. It has a prologue. We're going to be talking about Bel-Air, which is the hour-long Fresh Prince drama. That could be interesting. Also, a lot of discussion going on around how families are portrayed in film, and particularly real-life families, so we're going to tackle that. But part of the show is also your questions. So just a reminder, if you want to send in a Streamlabs, and we are going to be focusing on the Streamlabs if we can. We're trying to move away from Super Chats only because they take a big chunk of your money and by extension my money when you do Super Chat. A lot of that does not go to the channel. It goes to Google. So the Streamlab, we get a much bigger percentage of it. So the Streamlab address, if you're watching, is over in the comments. It's a pinned comment. You can click on it there. It's streamlabs.com/Dan Murrell Movies. $5 plus Streamlab will get your question asked on the air. So we would love to have you join in and make this show interactive. But before we get to that, while you're sending those in, let's tackle the first story. And this actually is, we're going to put out a spoiler warning because this does tackle some spoilers for Ghostbusters Afterlife, which came out last week. So if you haven't seen Ghostbusters Afterlife yet, then you may want to tune out for this portion of the show. We will take the banner off of the screen when we're done talking about spoilers. But this is a very interesting story that I wanted to talk about because it actually has to do with some of my own criticisms about movies previously and how sometimes you have to take things, in my opinion, a little bit on a case-by-case basis. So now that hopefully, if you have not seen Ghostbusters Afterlife, you're away, we're going to be talking about a crucial plot point in the third act of the film. So final spoiler warning. If you saw my review, I didn't do a spoiler review, but I talked about the third act of the movie and the fact that I thought that it was very, very well done. And it seems like many people thought that, even maybe some people that didn't like the movie that much. And a large part of it was the inclusion of one of the main four primary Ghostbusters who sadly passed away a few years ago, and that is Harold Ramis, who plays Egon Spengler. The main character in the movie, played by McKenna Grace, is his granddaughter. But in the finale of the film, alongside the three original Ghostbusters, we also see Egon Spengler return as a ghost to help them win their final victory. Let's hope final victory. I don't want them to bring Gozer back again. Bring a final victory over Gozer. And this was something, quite frankly, going into it, I did not want. When they did not show him at the beginning of the movie, I was very happy that they didn't because I generally have not liked this resurrection of people, particularly when you look at like the Rogue One of Tarkin and bringing back actors. However, I actually was on board with this because I felt like it came from a place of love. I felt like it paid tribute to that character. I think it gave people an opportunity to say goodbye to the character that they may not have had if they had excluded him. And apparently this was all done, and this was a story that ran in the Hollywood Reporter just a couple days ago. This was all done under the supervision and with the blessing of Ramis's family. Violet Ramis Steele, who actually wrote a book about her father and her time with her father and his time as a Ghostbuster, gave a wide-ranging interview about Ghostbusters Afterlife. But in this interview, she says that she was, as according to Hollywood Reporter, among the first to read the script, which was written by Jason Reitman and Gil Keenan, and it says that having the Ramis family's blessing was important to the writer-director. Violet Ramis Steele went on to say that the concept seemed weird to her when she was presented with the idea, but the concept faded fast thanks to Jason Reitman making sure she had a voice in the creative conversation. And this is a quote from Violet Ramis Steele. She said, quote, "It was so generous of him to let me feel as though I was a part of the making of the movie, even though I wasn't. I saw some drafts of the character of Egon along the way, and then of the CGI representation. She said it was so satisfying. They could have done him as this jolly Santa type, but that wouldn't have been true to the character. He was in great shape, nice and trim. My dad would have loved that." She went on to say, "It was surreal. There are so many parallels to real life, but it's just a movie, and it's not actually him. It's a character. Jason smartly focused on capturing the Egon character and not necessarily my dad. I feel like it really worked in that way. Ultimately, it leaves us with that feeling. The people we love are always with us. They don't go away." And this, I was very happy to read this because I may very well have changed my tune on the inclusion of Egon in the movie if his family had either not had any say in it or had some issues with it. But knowing that Ramis Steele was involved with this from the beginning, that they not only got her approval but got the approval from her sister and her brothers as well. I understand people saying, well, Harold Ramis wasn't around to give his approval, but as long as this is as far as they go cinematically, it makes me feel okay. And I think it's where we get into these gray areas. We talk about on the show a lot about extremes, going to extremes, the fact that people are one way or the other. I'm totally against this or I'm totally for that. This is a case where I think you have to go into those areas and take it on a case-by-case basis because knowing this and seeing the tone of it, it didn't feel exploitative to me. It felt like it was really an honor and a tribute to Harold Ramis, to the character of Egon. And so for me, this only underscores the fact that I really love the third act of this film. And this is something that I honestly went into the movie actively not wanting to be in this movie. So the fact that it was in the movie and I loved it says a lot about how I think they pulled it off.
Oh, I agree completely. I was also exactly where you were, kind of on pins and needles in the beginning of the film, where I'm like, are they going to do it? And the fact that they kept him in such heavy shadow, you knew who it was, but you couldn't see who it was, I thought was really smart. And then at the end, I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. We were in a theater with a bunch of sobbing people. Like it really, really hit, at least with the crowd we saw it with. And I think there's also a really big difference when we're talking about these kinds of uses between so special effects, even though they were not where they are now, they existed in his lifetime. And I'm sure that just in general, the conversation of special effects, maybe not related to his likeness, but I'm sure that they had a fairly good idea what his wishes would be. Where I get into more gray territory is with someone who passed on long before any special effects were created. They could not have ever imagined their likeness be used. And when their estate, even when they give permission, it's like if you're the great granddaughter of someone or the granddaughter of someone who you've never had that conversation with them, how can you know what they really wanted? And of course, it's under the family's purview, not just legally, but I mean, as much as you can say that you are doing to try to make sure that you're doing it above board, can you ever really know what they would have wanted? That's the only time where I'm like, I don't know how I feel about it. But this hit me in all the right places, especially because I'm an Egon. So that was perfect.
Yeah. And I was always, I kind of rotated between favorite Ghostbusters, but I think that Harold Ramis is underrated for his what he brings comedically. And he's actually the one that I've grown to appreciate more as I've gotten older. Just because he's so dry and everyone else is sort of given the comedic spotlight, even going up to Janine and, just characters other than him. And he just kind of brings this very, one of my favorites is in Ghostbusters 2 when he's doing the focus groups or the experiments and he's got the kids with the puppies and he ends the scene by turning to his assistant and he goes, okay, now let's take away the puppy. And it's just so dry and just that character of Egon. I love it. I would say that this story ends on a happy note, but the finding out about this thing with Violet Ramis Steele was great news. But then there was some equally discouraging news, which is that immediately the use of Harold Ramis, I began to sour on it because the next thing I saw about Ghostbusters Afterlife were some new toys that were unveiled by Hasbro on a live stream. And let's immediately start to waste this goodwill because we also will be getting a Harold Ramis, Grace McKenna Grace 2-pack action figure collection.
Yeah, I don't like
So
that.
Ghost Egon is now an action figure. It's going to be sold as a 2-pack. That there we have Spectral Egon with, I believe, a jar of spores, molds, and fungus with McKenna Grace. Which, I mean, I love that. I want that figure. I just, again, now this seems a bit cash grabby and exploitative. The worst thing is the name of this 2-pack, which is the name. Like they have a sub name for what it's called, and it is the, I believe it's the Ben. Can we? What's that picture say? It's the, I think. I think it's a third one. Is it the third one? Did I give you that picture? I may not have. Hang on. I might have just set us all up for failure here. I did not give you that one. Okay, hang on. I'm going to load this in. I don't know how I missed this one because this is the worst part of all of this. I'll throw it up here.
Well,
This
if you want, I
2-pack
can
is
riff for a
called
moment.
the Family That Busts Together 2-pack, which is like, do you not understand the whole "Bustin' makes me feel good" joke already going on about this? Like, this feels about as tone deaf as you could possibly get. Again, this just goes to show you, anytime somebody makes a genuine, heartfelt thing, the corporate side will immediately swoop in for the kill. So I would love to. I hope that McKenna Grace figure is available like side by side or on her own, because I would love to have that figure. But I don't think I want to buy the dead Harold Ramis figure. I just that feels like a bridge too far for me.
The only way that I think that could have worked is if it were like a set, or it had, one of those like cardstock backdrops where it had the silhouette just in black, a shadow of the shape of Harold Ramis that would be looked at as standing slightly behind / next to her. That's the only way it works. Is like he's there, but we're not putting his dead ghost likeness on an action figure. It just, maybe we're too sensitive, but it doesn't seem.
It just doesn't feel
taste.
right. I don't know. Maybe
like
if they
it.
were like giving some of it to charity, like if he had a favorite charity, and then like proceeds of any portions of whatever proceeds from coming from that figure would go to charity, I'd feel a little bit better about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just goes to show you, nothing can ever be 100% good. Because we have that. Okay, so that is it for. We will not reference any more spoilers for Ghostbusters Afterlife. You can, I'll take the banner off. We're good. There was one other, before we see if any questions have come in. There was one other story I wanted to talk about, and I think it's an interesting discussion. And this also refers to a family that is being portrayed right now in film, and that is the Williams family. King Richard, which is about Venus and Serena Williams, and particularly Venus's rise to fame and prominence as a tennis player, and also their father, Richard, who guided their career, was a polarizing figure in sports, certainly was their first coach, and and the movie shows this, worked them very hard, had very high expectations for them. And there was already some I don't even know if you call it controversy. Whenever somebody says something on Twitter, someone says it's a controversy. But I saw that there were several people and some threads going around of people that kind of had said, well, I wish that this wasn't about the man behind the Williams sisters, etc. But again, you can't just make a blanket pronouncement about this, because this is not a movie that was made without the involvement of the Williams family. In fact, the Williams family was very involved, and I wanted to share something. This is actually part of a letter that came with the stuff. This is for your consideration season, so a lot of the films, and I'm very lucky to be in a couple of critics groups, a lot of the films will send screening materials as well as sometimes a message or a note from the people that were involved. And so there was a message that came with the screener for King Richard, and it was attributed and signed by Venus and Serena Williams. And there was something I wanted to point out about this exact issue. There was one passage in particular that said, really talking about the scenes and the memories, and the fact that this was a movie that was supposed to be about their whole family. They say, quote, "Our dad's vision was even bigger than our circumstances, and it was powerful enough to boldly usher our entire family into a future he dreamed up, one which would have an impact not only on tennis, not only on female athletes of color, but on the entire world. Will and the filmmakers invited us and our sisters to be heavily involved because there is no us without our sisters. We wanted to make sure that our story was not only told the right way, but that it highlighted the critical role Black fathers play in a family. It's so important for artists to tell positive stories of Black fatherhood and for audiences to see them. Our sister, Isha Price, served as an executive producer and was on set every day to advise them and to honor our family's legacy. So again, I think that there is a tendency for people to just sort of sometimes knee-jerk and be offended on behalf of others, where that offense is not necessarily taken. And I think that people that saw King Richard and automatically jumped to this conclusion that's like, wait a minute, this is supposed to be about Venus and Serena. Is this an issue that goes on, especially when they're excuse me, when there are movies made about people where they're not involved, where, you focus on the man behind the woman? Yes, of course that happens. But again, you can't just take some instances of something happening and apply that broadly to everything, because if you watch this movie, this is very obviously a very personal story. And again, you can tell that Venus and Serena Williams saying right there, they wanted this to be a story not about them, but about their family, and the idea of talking about their father's role in their lives to jump immediately into this sort of being offended by how the story was told without even really checking in to see if this is how Venus and Serena Williams wanted their story to be told, which it is. Again, I think this is what really leads to so much of the just venom and anger that we see, particularly on social media, is people just jump to a thing without even doing any investigation about it or look at research or looking into it. And I know that social media is rife for hot takes, but at the same time, you don't want to start these again, it comes down to these false narratives where, you're trying to rile people up to be offended on behalf of Venus and Serena Williams, when they were the ones, along with their family, who not only approved this story, but were crucial in how the story was told and were there advising, etc.
Well,
the same way that I think some people
question?
jumped, of course.
Is the title of the movie Venus Williams? Is the title of the movie Venus and Serena? Is the title of the movie The Williams Sisters? What movie did people expect based on that title? Of course we knew whose story they were telling. And again, that's the story that was chosen to be told. I would definitely be very interested in seeing something that is focused on Venus and Serena, but I wasn't expecting that in this movie. Like, what did people expect? I'm just curious.
I think that because I saw people also sort of jumping and jumping onto Ghostbusters Afterlife sort of on behalf of the Ramis family and saying, oh, this is exploitation, etc. I think that there are times when that is the case. Yes, there are times when the achievements of women, people of color, are diminished in order to tell the story of the men or the white people or whoever that were behind their success. That's happened in so many other films. But the point being, that's not the case in either of these things. This was not an exploitation of Harold Ramis, because his family obviously was involved and signed on and were touched by this portrayal. This is not a sort of shunning of the legacy of Venus and Serena, because again, they were involved. So I think that it's just important to note when these things come up, to make sure that you're not kind of grabbing the torch and the pitchfork to be offended on behalf of somebody before you check to see if they themselves are offended by this, or this is a misrepresentation of them. If Venus and Serena had come out and said, we really feel like that our achievements were diminished in this film and it focused too heavily on our father, then that would be a different discussion, but that's not the case. And I just think it's another example of, I don't know. People like to kind of jump and be at the center of a conversation sometimes, and it's not always warranted. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not. But we don't really live in a gray society right now. It's sort of a polarized society.
I'll be our resident cynic today because I'm in that sort of mood. Outrage is trendy. It doesn't matter if it's warranted or unwarranted. Outrage gets you clicks, it gets you likes, it gets you shared, gets you followers. Outrage is very in vogue. And sometimes it's earned, sometimes it's necessary. And sometimes that discourse is incredibly important to change, like the social landscape of how we look at stuff. But other times it's just people being attention whores.
Yeah, sometimes. What's the baking update? How are we doing over there? Are we still in prep mode? What are you it's very rare that we get a live look at you cooking, so.
I've just added the eggs and egg yolks. So I'm going to add in some honey in a little bit and some seasoning.
Ooh. Should we try to have Ben bake along with you and see if he can replicate what happened when we did the cookies?
I don't think Ben has any cornmeal though. So I'm making cornbread, so you got to have cornmeal.
Oh, that's too bad. because those
Womp
cookies turned out
womp.
so great way back when you tried to make cookies with Ben.
I love that you were there for that. That honestly makes it so much more special.
That was amazing. Let me see if we've got any questions. Wow, already.
We have a
Jeez,
lot
we
of
got some
questions.
people
Ben is
jumping
helping
in.
out, by the way. Normally I would do questions,
Yes.
but I'm busy. And so Ben
Ben
is
is wrangling.
doing all of the work, and I'm taking all the credit.
Linger just donated and said no question.
Linger.
John Linger,
Air.
what's that?
Air.
Linger. I'm sorry,
Yes.
Linger. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mara. Mara helps keep me with pronunciations correct. Linger says no question. Just thank you very much, Linger. I appreciate that. John Layton, wow, an incredibly generous donation. Just says love you guys. Happy Thanksgiving, John. That's incredible. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. Jody donated and said jumping jack yippee. That was worthy of young Anakin Skywalker. That yippee. Peyton with an update for Peyton sent us a package. Yes, Peyton, I'm sorry I haven't responded to your message. We're gonna go check the post box probably if we can on Friday. I think it that happens sometimes. It should be there for pickup, but I'll let you know if we have an issue. But thank you for that. Michael's saying, "What is Mara cooking? Happy Thanksgiving, Mara. Do you want to give an update for those that weren't here at the beginning? A cornbread is first
I'm
up.
currently
Yes.
making my sweet seasoned fall festive cornbread. It has clover, honey, a little bit of like the traditional, almost like pumpkin pie spices, but like microscopic amounts. It doesn't taste like pumpkin pie. It mostly just tastes like sweet cornbread. But I put a little tiny, like a pinch of cloves, a pinch of freshly grated nutmeg, and maybe like a little pinch of allspice, but just because. And then I'm finishing. I made my famous shortbread cookies last night. I'm going to frost those later with some royal icing. And then I'm making yeast rolls, which take forever because I want to tie them in little fancy knots this year. And then my pumpkin pie, my double crusted deep dish pumpkin pie. Like I had to go get a special deep dish for the pie.
Oh, we're eating good tomorrow. We are eating real good tomorrow. I can't wait. Jodester with a very generous donation just saying happy Thanksgiving. Love you guys. Thank you so much, Jodester. Always great to see you in the chat, and that's very, very generous of you. Thank you so much. Panthers fan, kill me. Uh-oh. Well, obviously not a great NFL season. How do you prepare when you see a movie you know you have to criticize and tear apart to give a review, but still try to enjoy it all the same, as if you aren't trying to criticize it, but to enjoy it like everyone else? Well, I think it sort of goes into your mentality, which is I try not to go into a movie knowing that I'm going to have to criticize it and tear it apart. And sometimes I'm pleasantly surprised. I mean, I legitimately, Mara will tell you, I legitimately go into every Transformers movie with the sincere hope that this will be the one that is going to turn things around. And you know what? With Bumblebee, I was right. I liked that movie. And I was prepared for the same crappy Transformers movie I'd already seen many times before. With F9, I went in with an open mind. I didn't particularly enjoy the film, but sometimes I go into a movie. Den of Thieves was one where I was just like, oh, this is going to be another Gerard Butler, crappy. And I ended up really liking that movie. So I think for me, the key is to not go into a movie saying, oh, this is going to be terrible. And then sometimes I'm surprised. I mean, House of Gucci, which I did like overall, and I'll get into it a little bit more tomorrow, but House of Gucci was one where I'd heard great things and I'd heard bad things, and it would have been easy to go in with a critical eye being like, all right, I'm ready to tear this thing a new hole. But I actually ended up liking it. It's I try to go in free of any expectation, good or bad, which is not always the easiest thing to do, but I think that's where some people fall into a trap is they go into, they decide which movies they're going to go into ready to hate before they even see them, and I think that generally tends to be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, I think part of it is also, I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding. Like film criticism can also be singing the praises of a movie. Like it's not, you're not intending to go in there and chop it to bits. Like if you are, then honestly, you're not a very good critic. Because criticism involves like discussing all the aspects of a movie and analyzing them according to some objective metrics and some subjective metrics. And I mean, it doesn't have to be like, you can walk into a movie like Parasite, and guess what? Film criticism occurred about that movie. It was just overwhelmingly positive. Yeah. And furthermore, I'd like to point out, with no names being dropped, but one bad example is our screening of Venom, where every single person was just like, oh, gotta watch this dog pile now. And it's like, oh, cool. So you're definitely gonna like it then. Like people had made up their minds before they even saw that movie.
Many people had, yes. And I think that I was prepared for a terrible movie, and I ended up enjoying it. So
Yeah,
there
we
you go.
ran out of that theater before talking to anybody we knew because we were like, yeah, we're the only people that like this.
Yeah, there's usually a little huddle of critics, oftentimes outside after a screening, and we forewent the usual huddle because I was very sure, and I was pretty much right, that I would be the only ones, along with Mara, that actually enjoyed the movie. 792 says, "Do you think Lin-Manuel Miranda's directing of Tick Tick Boom is Oscar nom worthy? I think it would be cool if his eventual EGOT was achieved by a non-Best Original Song Oscar." I really loved Tick Tick Boom, and I think it had some great directorial flair to it. I think that it's possible, but I think it's going to be so competitive this year. I mean,
I
when
think
you
it might
have
be able
so
to
many
get an
great
editing nom
movies,
though.
it could perhaps get an editing, a sound editing, particularly. I think it definitely could. Andrew Garfield, I think, is going to be the main focus for that. But I also think we have a
Oh, I meant
year
like
where,
film editing, like because the pacing of that movie and the framing device is so necessary, and how they go back and forth and how they shape the film. I could
yeah,
see it.
it's that's definitely possible. I just think in the directing category, um, even movies like Dune, etc., it's so competitive, and I wonder. Oh, hello, Kat. I wonder if we are going to be. I love Muffin, but she only ever picks this time when I'm on the air to do this.
That's not true. She loves you. She's usually in the show people the cubby behind your chair.
Yeah, she's back here a lot of times, but yeah, I just mean
She
like
might go in there
in
if
my
you
in my
offer
face,
it.
like in my face as the show goes. Anyway, I think it's possible, especially if Tick Tick Boom kind of picks up momentum as award season goes on. But I would not put him as one of the favorites, just because there are so many other movies that have a huge directorial style, directorial flair. Ridley Scott's got two this year. Denis Villeneuve has a
Yeah.
movie. There's just a lot going on. Mercurial Funk says, "Hey Dan, I know you've
Great
watched
name.
animated shows before. With its review and ratings, have you thought about watching Arcane on Netflix? What? Yes, most definitely. I haven't heard about a movie. Sorry, as I bumped the camera. I haven't heard about a movie or a show like I've been hearing about this show since Demon Slayer, which I loved. So yes, I am going to commit that I'm going to watch Arcane. However, I can't commit to a time frame only because these next 6 days, 7 days, 6 days are the first deadline for nominating in one of my critics groups is in 6 days, and I always try to see as many of the movies as I can, because I don't want to be one of the people that's just like, well, I heard this person's good, or I only watch like the 6 movies that I hear have the most hype and just nominate those. Like, I try to, and you could never watch all of them, but I try to watch as many of the movies as I can to actually nominate the ones that I personally think are the best, not the sort of consensus. So I'm going to be very tied up with that for the next week or so. But I do want to catch Arcane because I've heard great things about it. So I'm thinking probably next week. But then we go to LA for a week for Spectacular. In December, I'm hoping to get a review out for Arcane, and hopefully people will still be interested in hearing what I think, because I've heard some great things about it. Harves says, "Happy Turkey Day to you and Mara. Any Thanksgiving movie suggestions that are not planes, trains, and automobiles? I think Coda has potential if more people catch on to it. Also, Fast and Furious movies, because they're about family. I mean, they are about family, so Fast and Furious would be a good one. Coda is a great movie, and I feel like because it's on Apple TV Plus, most people haven't heard of it, and I wonder if it's even going to be on the awards show radar. That's a great movie. It's a great family movie. I mean, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is such a perfect Thanksgiving film. Home for the Holidays is one. I haven't seen it in quite a while, but it's one of the few other ones that are specifically focused on Thanksgiving. It's got Jodie Foster directed it. It's got Holly Hunter in it. It's got Robert Downey Jr. in it. It's a great ensemble cast. I would recommend that. I think I may revisit it at some point because it's a specifically Thanksgiving movie, which there aren't that many of. John Lestrina, thank you, John. Do you know what pairs with a nice Thanksgiving dinner and ice cold Corona? Add lime to give it an extra boost. As the great Dominic Toretto said, "Salud mi familia." See?
Ugh,
Fast and Furious, it's all about family. John Lestrina.
if
They
you say
should
so.
fly him out to the next premiere or
Oh yeah.
something for Fast and Furious. I've never seen anybody who's as big a fan of Fast and Furious as John Lestrina. I love it. Letty. Maybe, perhaps Fast and Furious is Letty.
Oh man,
Why do
we're
you think
really
it's?
getting some attention now.
Yeah. Letty says, why do you think Eternals is getting a hard time in the U.S. but doing well worldwide? Here in the U.K., sales are not dipping as much, and the overall views are very positive. I loved the movie. That's a good question. I think that I don't know exactly. I think part of it is that it's this is going to sound very against my own country, but I think that worldwide audiences are a little more receptive to the artistic nature of Eternals, which has kind of always been the case. Than perhaps a lot of folks here that are more used to the typical Marvel film. That, I mean, I didn't like Eternals particularly, and it wasn't because it wasn't the typical Marvel movie. I just kind of wasn't on board. But I think it does have kind of a more global perspective than we've seen in a lot of Marvel movies, meaning that it's not the typical American blockbuster, which you could sort of group a lot of other Marvel movies into. And I think that's part of it. And then I think also we're so inundated with things here, with movies here, and it's not quite as bad around the world. And so I think Eternals might also be a little bit more of an event in a lot of countries. So that would be my guess, although I don't know for sure. Just a couple of guesses. Sakaki Chronos says, greetings, Dan. What is your opinion on the Austin Powers films? Do you think Hollywood should go and reboot/remake/ give it another sequel sometime soon? I think that the Austin Powers films are go in release order is kind of my feeling as far as quality goes. Although I do feel that there are specific bits of the movie that get funnier in each one. So I think that overall the first Austin Powers is the best one. I think the second one is good. It's a little more uneven, but it has some funnier bits than the first movie does. And then I think that 3 overall is the least consistent, but also has some of the funniest parts of any of the 3, if that makes any sense. So I think that they got all... I think they got very inconsistent as they went, but there were still high watermarks in all of them. I think Austin Powers is something we can lay to rest. I just don't. It was so of its time, ironically. I'm not really. Let's invent the next new parody franchise. Why do we have to keep reinventing Austin Powers? I'm fine with leaving it where it is. Stretchy Hulk, my favorite name, says, Happy Thanksgiving. Are you going to get to go see Licorice Pizza soon? I am making a trek into New York City this weekend to see it in 70mm. Viva PTA. Ooh. Yes, I get to see Licorice Pizza on a week from yesterday. So next Tuesday, I get to see Licorice Pizza. So you will be getting a review of that right around then. It's not opening here, I don't think, for like another month or something. But luckily, we have some great people here that are really putting in some legwork to get us screenings here in Arkansas, because we're actually making another trek to Dallas on Monday to go see West Side Story, because that's the closest place where it's playing, at least this early. And again, I want to see that movie before the nomination deadlines, etc. So we're making a lot of trips out of town to see movies, but we get to see Licorice Pizza here. I actually get to see that and Don't Look Up the same day next Tuesday. So look out for reviews of those then. Haskell420. Hey, Haskell. What's that? Jelly. I know. Jelly. Yeah, they're clamping down on guests.
They won't let me go. It's kind of silly. There's like 8 people in that theater.
I know. Haskell420 says, Hi, Dan and Mara. Happy Thanksgiving Eve. I thought it was BS, but it is real. The Daily Bugle has a TikTok account with Jay Jonah and unpaid intern Betty Brant.
I saw that.
Sounds like something that Jay Jonah Jameson would do. I think that he would have an unpaid intern run a TikTok account for him. What are these kids doing? Give me a TikTok. I don't know how to run this thing. I can see that. Eric Grebner, thank you, Eric. Just got here and wonderful seeing Mara cooking. Mara, have you ever used grains of paradise? This is the secret ingredient to the apple pie I'm making in a bit. Well, Eric, your secret's out. First of all, I hate to tell you, we are streaming live. Grains of paradise sounds like something in Dungeons and Dragons. Have you ever used grains of paradise?
I don't even know what it is. I mean, I've definitely done like my alternative to an apple pie, which is a quince pie, because a quince is kind of like an apple, but like more fancy kind of. But no, I don't know what this is, and I feel like I need to. I feel for some reason like I should. I'm a failure. Yeah. I'm never baking again.
No, that's not true at all. And finally, before we move on to our next story, Xenot Likax. I'm so sorry. I'm not even close to what it probably is. Xenot Likax. I'm curious about the nationality of your channel's now sizable audience. Do you have an estimate on how many are from outside the U.S.? Much love from an enthusiastic yet tired Swede. Well, I hope you're able to get some rest. That's a great question. I could actually look that up right now, thanks to YouTube, which has some very handy analytics that I can check out, which is actually very useful to know. Yes.
I'm thirsty.
Oh, I'm sorry, honey. I'm on the air, but I have moral support for your for you getting a drink, considering you're in far closer proximity to the refrigerator. Well, we'll have to wait till we're done, honey. I'm sorry. 49. Sorry, as I bumped the camera. 49.8% of my views in the last month have been inside the United States. So right now it's about 50-50. 50% in the US, about 50% out. Looks like the UK, Canada, Australia, and India are my next biggest ones, but they're all single digits. So, yeah, I mean, that's something I always have to keep in mind is not everybody that I'm talking to lives in the US. As a matter of fact, we're running about half and half right now, at least as far as I know. All right. Thank you for sending those questions in. We'll check back in with them a little bit later. Just a reminder, Streamlabs $5 and up. You'll get your question asked on the air. Thank you to everybody that sent in a question so far and just a donation. Very generous, and I really, really do appreciate it. Let's move on to something that I saw yesterday that just, I heard the idea and I was like, well, maybe they could make something out of this, but it's not off to a promising start. And that is a show that is debuting next year on Peacock called Bel-Air, which Will Smith is involved with. He's not in it, but he is helping to produce it. It is an hour-long, dramatic reimagining of the iconic sitcom The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which ran on NBC throughout much of the 1990s. It was really the star-making turn for Will Smith. They released a teaser. I would play a little clip of the teaser, but I got in trouble. We got our video demonetized over the 7-second clip that we played of Kiss fighting the monsters in the amusement park a couple weeks ago. So I'm not even going to mess with anything that has music in it. There was a teaser trailer for Bel-Air that played. It featured the star of the show underwater in a swimming pool. It played with the iconography of the show a little bit as we got to see him sitting on the throne as the Prince of Bel-Air with the crown, things floating around. We have a very stylized logo for the show itself of Bel-Air. And then, just kind of inside jokes, kind of a Nirvana-esque thing, swimming around, reaching out for the crown. Now, over this was a very dramatic reading of some of the lyrics from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song about life getting flipped, turned upside down, sitting on the throne, etc. We see the fuzzy dice floating in the swimming pool. I've got to be honest, this felt like to me something that would have been made for Funny or Die like 5 years ago. Like one of those videos that went viral because they did this like parody thing of like, oh, what if Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was, a dramatic series, and they made this. Like the fact that this is like for real, I've got to be honest. Listen, you can pull anything off. I've certainly been proven wrong with things like the Lego Movie, but everything about this to me just seems somewhat ridiculous. This is the official summary of the show provided by Peacock. Set in modern-day America, Bel-Air is a serialized one-hour dramatic analog of the 90s sitcom The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that leans into the original premise, Will's complicated journey from the streets of West Philadelphia to the gated mansions of Bel-Air. With a reimagined vision, Bel-Air will dive deeper into the inherent conflicts, emotions, and biases that were impossible to fully explore in a 30-minute sitcom format while still delivering swagger and nods to the original show. Which again, if you're gonna do this, then I don't need to see a Carlton dance. Like if you're gonna do this, don't give me the nods to the original show. Just make your own show. It's like you're pleasing
they
nobody
have their
here.
Cake and eat it too.
Yes, exactly. If you want to make, you could, first of all, there's a great drama to be made about somebody moving from the East Coast to the West Coast and the culture shock, etc. But like, this is just, I hope this show's great, and I'm the wrongest I've ever been, because this just seems really dumb to me. It's like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was, first of all, it got serious, and it was really good at getting serious. Like, there were moments in the show, like when Will's talking about, his dad, and his abandonment issues. They did tackle race. They did do things, and the gun violence. They tackled things on the show from time to time in a very serious way, and it worked. So I don't know where this idea was that the 90s Fresh Prince of Bel-Air wasn't able to get into serious topics, because it 100% was, and it did, and it was not that bad.
No, I think it actually, again, I like the idea when media can kind of con you into learning a lesson, because if you already agree with the social topics of something, just seeing it validated on screen doesn't really contribute to the conversation. But that show was a comedy, and I think that there are some people that were probably watching that were not expecting to get some sort of serious lesson or critique on race. And guess what? They were there, they were watching, they got it, and they are endeared to these characters through established development, but also through the comedy. And then they learn this lesson, or they get to talk about it, and they say, oh, I never thought of it like that. Because some people, whether it's just the absence of empathy or being so completely unaware because they just had vastly different circumstances that they didn't realize through genuine, well-intentioned ignorance, like, you can talk about something like that. And I like that. Right. I like that you can convince people to learn lessons.
And I mean, and I watched the Saved by the Bell, and I know that there's I think a second season that you can watch now. I watched the Saved by the Bell reboot, and I actually somewhat enjoyed that, because they kept it in the same universe. It's of the same kind of spirit of the show, but it is updated. Like, they do talk about important things, which Saved by the Bell also did, but I'll admit it, in a much cheesier way. But they were able to expand the diversity and representation of the cast, and yet it's still the spirit of the original show. It's still at its heart what the original show was, and I think that it works. And so I don't know. And I know that it kind of has its roots in sort of like a fan, like, this was kind of the guy was pitching it, but I don't think it was being pitched as a parody originally. It feels like this is just going to be taken so seriously, and I don't know. It's just off on the wrong foot with me. Maybe it'll be a great show. Maybe it will be, but this to me seems like the most self-serious thing. And again, this felt like a parody. This really did feel like a parody, and so it's not off to a great start. But there've been plenty of things that have been marketed poorly that turned out good. So I'm not going to write this off. I'm going to give it a shot. I don't agree with this approach, because gritty Fresh Prince reboot. It just, I don't know. We'll see. Let's see what is next up on the rundown. Jurassic World Dominion is coming out next summer, finally. Jeff Goldblum will return. We're having a sale. Sorry, it's one of my favorite Jeff Goldblum bits from Portlandia. We do that all the time. Jeff Goldblum really is coming back. Laura Dern is coming back. Sam Neill is coming back. Who knows who else is coming back? So it's going to be the end of the new... Dinosaurs are coming back. It's going to be the end of the new Jurassic World trilogy. And they released a 5-minute prologue on YouTube to help promote the film. It appears that this may be the actual prologue to the film. We spend a lot of the time 65 million years ago, back when dinosaurs ruled the earth, as the original movie set up. So we got to see a bunch of dinosaurs walking around and doing dinosaur things. We saw pteranodons. Those, I'm sure they're not. They look like pteranodons, but I'm sure they're not. Vast caverns, empty canyons, a fight. Now, here's what I like about this picture. You can see they're sort of trying to, not retcon, but like appease the new science, because you see here with the T-Rex, they're not exactly feathers, but they're revising when they show the dinosaurs as they were, they're kind of going into the fact that they have some sort of a feather type thing on their skin. So, they're trying to update the science as you go. Of course, you could always say that the reason that the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park don't have that is because they were engineered not to. And you know what? I'm okay with that explanation. Then we get a cameo from the mosquito, ladies and gentlemen. The one person in Jurassic the Park franchise that we haven't yet revisited, the mosquito sucking the blood out of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. And then we get a very helpful title card that says that we are now 65 million years later. In case you didn't know, this is now modern times. We have a Tyrannosaurus Rex that is running through the woods. It's on a rampage. There's a drive-in movie theater, which is playing it was a double feature of Flash Gordon and American Graffiti, which, sorry, folks, if that's, I mean, listen, they're not bad movies, but, you know, that's a bit, anyway. So, yeah, there's drive-in theater. The T-Rex comes in. First of all, I don't care, like, literally preceding this, there's people running and screaming and cars getting flipped over, and these three jokers just sitting here completely oblivious. I don't know, I know that they're just like, oh, look how hip they are. They don't notice anything. But, I mean, there's a point to which your characters just have to be dumb to not notice what's going on. The dinosaur goes up, it roars in front of the screen, the film breaks, it runs off, and then we get a to be continued next summer in Jurassic World Dominion. To me, the coolest part of this trailer, and it's the first image I pulled, Ben, was the sort of Pangea-like logo for Universal. So it says Universal, and then it disappears, and then like that was the coolest thing for me, which was in the first 10 seconds. Colin Trevorrow returns to direct. It's coming out next summer. It's like I said before. I'm surprised
that he's able to be trusted after Book of Henry. They took away his Star Wars.
But he would have saved it because somebody leaked a script and he would have saved the whole franchise. So he's out of movie jail.
Definitely, of course.
I am going to remain optimistic as much as I can. I will say this prologue didn't do a whole lot for me.
I'm joking.
It did not do much for me. I actually liked the thing they put out like a year or so ago that was like the short film where they're camping and the dinosaurs come out.
Was that it?
Yeah. No, that's like the kids show. They did like it was like a one-off.
What was it? Oops, sorry. Dang it.
They did like a one-off. Anyway, I liked that better than this, and apparently that's not going to be part of the movie.
Crap. Why can't I think of it?
Yeah, I don't know.
You watched
This didn't do a whole lot for me. So
my brain is broken.
Ben, you've got something to say. Pop in here. You never have to ask permission. Just pop in and say hi.
I just have one thing to say is that this movie, this trailer, one, go watch Camp Cretaceous. I'm telling you, it's amazing. It's better than both Jurassic World movies combined. The seasons are so fun. They're so lighthearted. Everybody go watch Camp Cretaceous. Season 4 is about to come out. I'm so excited. But then just like this trailer just proves how easy it would be to capture these dinosaurs. It's at a drive-in movie theater. Like I saw this in IMAX. I didn't rewatch it, so I don't know if it's the exact same thing. But it's like, is there a helicopter going around and they're just missing it? And then it's so basically it's Jurassic World because of just pure incompetence by Fish and Wildlife, or I don't know. I'm done. It's okay. Bye.
It's already broken, Ben. If I know I'm gonna have to review this movie, so I feel like I have to maintain a professional aura of impartiality, but this doesn't do a whole lot for me. It doesn't give me a whole lot of hope, but up until that movie starts rolling in front of my eyes, I will remain hopeful that this will do much more for me than the previous two Jurassic World films have done, which is not much. Which is no news to anyone who's been following me for quite some time. I'm not particularly a fan of the previous two Jurassic World films, and I hope this one is better. At the very least, let's bring back the characters for a good reason. Let's give them something to do. Jeff Goldblum came in and taped for like 2 hours, and then they made him the whole trailer of the last movie. Let's hope that all this hype around the returning characters isn't like one scene of them having dinner.
Even Jurassic Park 3, they brought back Ellie to be like, look at the wife and mother who can make phone calls and save the day.
Yeah. So let's hope they at least bring them back in some kind of meaningful role. That's always a hope for me. Let's see if you've got any more questions that you've sent in, because it's not just my show, it's your show too. We have one from Jarrett. Jarrett says, $1 million questions here. Is Nightmare Before Christmas a Christmas movie? And is Die Hard a Christmas movie? I'm trying to think. I think I argued this once on Movie Fights.
I think Die Hard is definitely a Christmas movie.
Die Hard is 100% a Christmas movie. No question about it. I think I may have argued on an early episode of Movie Fights that Nightmare Before Christmas is a Christmas movie, but I honestly think it's a Halloween movie. It's both. The answer is it's both, but I think it's more of a Halloween movie.
I just don't really care because I didn't watch it until like a couple years ago, so I don't have any nostalgia for it. It can be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah. Eric Grebner says, grains of paradise is also known as alligator pepper. It's an African spice used in some Creole dishes. So there you go.
That sounds like I want it now.
I also said Creole.
Do they sell it at Whole Foods?
I said Creole. Weird. I said Creole. Do they sell it at Whole Foods? I'm betting they do. It sounds like something they sell at Whole Foods. Cody Mills says, I've been watching you for years, and somehow this is the first time seeing and hearing from Mara. Y'all seem great together. Oh, thank you, Cody. I think we are too. I appreciate that.
I like you, Dan.
I like you too. You're awesome. Jodester, thank you again, Jodester. Very generous. I think Bel-Air has such a following, it's going to be a hard sell. Not something I'd be interested in, but if someone wants it, more power to them. Yeah, and listen, again, it's sort of like with Jurassic World. Everyone kind of feels like I'm rooting against the Jurassic World movies. Nothing would delight me more than a great Jurassic World movie, because you know what that means? We have a great Jurassic World movie. So I would be delighted if Bel-Air comes out and it's like, you know what? I thought this was a dumb idea, the marketing was terrible, and they actually made a great show, because that would mean there's a great TV show out there for people to enjoy. But yeah, I'm not rooting against it. I'm just not particularly in favor thus far. Panthers fan kill me again. I'm so sorry. Says Doug Jones is one of the most underrated actors. I love this. Doug Jones is one of the most underrated actors ever. He literally becomes every character and spends half his life in a makeup chair. Why do the Oscars not notice the actors that wear costumes and makeup or even motion capture like Andy Serkis? They should. Panthers fan, I should be paying you $5 for that comment. Bravo. Yes. Mara and I actually were watching the features on Pan's Labyrinth because it was part of our movie club last month back in October. And they went into the whole thing about Doug Jones and the fact that, like, you know, that's all him. They just were, you know, using effects to take out green stockings around his legs. But, like, he traced the evolution of the fawn and, like, started out as an old person, like, older. And then as the movie goes, gets younger. He learned the lines phonetically so that the dubbing looked good. And, yes, and motion capture, I've said my piece on many times. 100%, I think it should be considered alongside every other kind of acting. And then
at a minimum, they should have a special achievement Oscar for it. Like, it should be a regularly dispensed, when earned special achievement Oscar. Like, kind of like before they had visual effects and stuff.
Exactly. They used to do that for a lot of technical categories. They wouldn't give a visual effects Oscar every year, but then in years where it was warranted, they would just award. And it was like winning one. They would award an Academy Award for something like visual effects, and I think that they should do that. And
I really hope. One.
I think that's exactly. I really hope that in the near future that actors like Doug Jones and Andy Serkis, at the very least, if they're not going to recognize them with an official Academy Awards character or a category, at the very least, they should be awarded honorary Academy Awards because they have added so much to the fabric of film. And Doug Jones also television, because he was in things like the Buffy episode with the silent guys that kind of like floated through. Like, he was like the main guy. They've added so much to the fabric, and they never get their due. So here, Panthers fan, I'm with you on that train. Robert Stack, very generous. Thank you, Mr. Stack.
Robert Stack, always love hearing from him.
Thanks for being you. And you know, as Mr. Stack would say, maybe you can solve this mystery. Josh Kahn says, hey, Dan, not sure if you have checked it out yet, but with Arcane first season done, I can't recommend it enough. Top 3 show of the year, in my opinion, a must watch. Yes, Josh, I was saying earlier, as soon as I am like temporarily able to watch Arcane, it is on my watch list because I very much want to see the show. I've heard so much about it. So stay tuned. I will be weighing in on Arcane as soon as I'm able to see it. Let's talk about Ridley Scott. We're going to be talking about House of Gucci here on the channel tomorrow. I'll have my review out for the second Ridley Scott film of the year. But the first film that came out was a movie called The Last Duel, which did not do well at the box office. And Ridley Scott has some thoughts about this. These have been much publicized. He believes that he has targeted the culprit behind the box office failure of The Last Duel. And he thinks that it is, well, the headlines say millennials, but he has another word for them. These comments were made on Mark Maron's WTF podcast just this past week, and Ridley Scott says, quote, I think what it boils down to, what we've got today are the audiences who were brought up on these effing cell phones, the millennial. Do not ever want to be taught anything unless you're told it on a cell phone. This is a broad stroke, but I think we're dealing with it right now with Facebook. This is a misdirection that has happened where it's given the wrong kind of confidence to this latest generation, I think. And, listen, a lot of people have taken Ridley Scott to task because millennials are actually like my age down to like 25. So I think the youngest millennial at this point is about 25 years old. And now we have the generation under us. But this gets a little more complicated because I think that Ridley Scott is angry at the right people, but for the wrong reasons. Because I did a little research, and according to Deadline, only 28% of the audience for The Last Duel, this is when on opening weekend at least, only 28% of the audience for The Last Duel was over 25. So in actuality, 72% of the audience was actually younger than millennials. So young kids or young people did show up for The Last Duel, but millennials, 25 and older, did not. So Ridley Scott is actually angry at the right people, but for the wrong reason, because the millennials are not the kids on their cell phones with the Facebook, which, by the way, both of those things are also not accurate. Unless he's talking about people my age and older who are on their cell phones and are on Facebook. So I think maybe Ridley Scott actually might have had it pegged. I think he wasn't yelling at kids. He was yelling at people 25 and up who are on the Facebook, because I think everybody older than 25 is a boomer at this point, at least from what I understand, are on the Facebook doing the stuff that you do on the Facebook. So, I think Ridley Scott may have been misinterpreted here. I think he might have nailed it. I think he nailed it. It's just that everyone assumed he was talking about kids. He was actually talking about the people who did not show up for The Last Duel. So I'm going to go to bat for Ridley Scott a little bit here. I don't know whether he knows he was right or not, but he was actually right about who to be angry at here. And maybe he wasn't just kind of an older man who thinks that everybody who hates this stuff are these kids in their stupid cell phones. Tie an onion to your belt, as was the style of the time. I'm going to give him credit for actually being misunderstood here and say that he got it right. What do you think, Mara?
I'm inclined to agree. I mean, I think that older directors, Scorsese most notably, have some pointed opinions about modern day films. And I think that this could easily just be bottled up as one of those, well, he's old, so he doesn't know what he's talking about. But
yeah.
It's kind of
I
interesting, though. I love when we look at the data behind these things, because a lot of times there is something quantifiable to back up a statement like that. And whether he knew it or not, I just like looking at it through that lens, because it's easy to see how something could look a certain way. Like maybe he's talked to people, or maybe he's heard, like, hey, I talked to my kid and my kid said, from people he knows. And so he's just using a small subset of people to make this generalization. It's just that the data doesn't bear it out.
I mean, older audiences have been the slowest to return to the theater. So in a way, he was correct. The millennials did let him down.
Should we just start self-identifying as millennials?
I do, because it's weird, because apparently I have to identify as a geriatric millennial. So you know what? Yes, I am from now on, I am going to self-identify as a millennial, because to identify myself as a geriatric millennial, I refuse to do so. So Mara, you can label yourself however you want, but yes, rather than geriatric millennial, I would like to say that I now am a millennial. I'm one of Ridley Scott's
me. I don't
millennials.
like labels, period. So I'm fine.
Although we did go see it, so we're kind of work against that theory, but still, yes, I'm not a geriatric millennial. I'm a millennial. Official. Breaking news right here on the show.
You heard it here. By the way, Mara, I do have breaking news for you at some point when you're ready for it.
I was about to say, why don't we get an update on how you're doing? And then this is fun, because usually I surprise Mara with segments on the show and games and stuff, but she actually has a segment that she wanted to surprise me with. So Mara, why don't you give people an update on how you're doing? And also I will turn the show over to you for your segment.
All right. It's going slowly. I'm trying to be as quiet as I can. I'm sifting confectioner sugar, also called icing sugar. Some people call it powdered sugar. I have to do a lot. I have to do 6 1/3 cups. So it's kind of a lot. It's very important, by the way. You always sift your sugar. All your dry ingredients, really. Okay, so I have a scoop.
Uh-oh.
I have an inside piece of information from Chloe, the director of marketing.
From Netflix?
So,
Is she back at Netflix?
This was a covert meeting. This was done very covertly. We met behind a Shoney's, and she was a very good girl. I'm on my headset, by the way, so I'm going to go off camera for a moment here.
Okay.
But you'll be able to still hear me talk because I have
Generally,
to do
you don't want to meet a source behind a Shoney's. But we trust Chloe from marketing, so we'll
She's
allow
a very good girl.
She is a very good girl. If you don't know, Chloe, the director of marketing, was once employed by MoviePass, was apparently put on the chow line when MoviePass went out of business. But with the potential pending, oh God, Ben, you're fired. With the please don't leave. With the potential return of MoviePass, it would seem that Chloe, the director of marketing, may be back on the job. So I've heard that. We have breaking news. Oh my goodness, Mara has somehow appeared in the studio.
So, I was told to give this to you. Dan and I, by the way, so Hanukkah starts this weekend, the weekend of Thanksgiving, because this year, of course, it does. And we're going to be spending a majority of that time in Los Angeles. So rather than bring the Hanukkah gifts to Los Angeles, we've actually started gifts early, so that way we will get them all finished before the trip. But we are bringing the menorah.
Yes.
But this is a special bonus gift to you from Chloe, the director of marketing.
Chloe, the director of marketing. What could it be? Is it a bill for all the money that we cost MoviePass?
Could be. Do you also do you want to tell them? Oh, hi, Muffin. She went in her little hoodie. Do you want to tell them who it's from?
Secret Jew Santa.
Yep.
We celebrate both Hanukkah and Christmas here in the house. So. Oh my goodness! Look at this. Oh, this is incredible. See, this card is long. I mean, this card, you couldn't use this card when it was actually in service, so you don't have to black out the numbers here. This is incredible, ladies and gentlemen. My MoviePass card has been framed. This is my actual MoviePass from the... Oh, wow. This is incredible. We now have my actual MoviePass immortalized forever in a frame. This is never leaving the set.
Hi, honey.
This is never leaving the set. I love this. Thank you, honey. All right, well, I should say thank Chloe for me. For going into the bowels of MoviePass HQ and framing this for me. Yes, this is going perfect. I love it. Well, there we go.
If we have to, we can take out the glass, by the way.
Glass. Sorry.
That's all right.
Thank you, honey. That's wonderful.
You're welcome.
Mwah.
Okay, I'm going to go downstairs.
All right. What a wonderful gift from Chloe, the director of marketing. Who could have seen that coming? I certainly did not. Yeah, you can screenshot that number if you want. Let me tell you right now, it ain't going to work. They stopped working when we still belonged to the service, so it's definitely not going to work anymore. Thank you very much. That was a wonderful gift. Muffin is still standing here. Yeah, just hang out. You're good, Muffin. Yeah, just sit down. It's all good.
Oh, man. It's amazing. I'm all the way back over here now.
I know, right? How'd that happen? Well, let's see if anybody has sent in a question. We have a couple. It looks like we have one question from Tori X Rose. Thank you, Tori. Hi, Mara and Dan. What are your favorite anime shows / movies? I've been getting into them more lately. Hope you both have a wonderful holiday with the cats. I wanted to make sure I put all those S's in there because you put in the Streamlab. Well, anime shows, I have to say, I'm a noob. I've really only watched Demon Slayer. That's pretty much the only anime show that I've watched, although I want to get more into it. Movies, I'm also pretty new, but I loved My Neighbor Totoro. We've gotten into the Ghibli stuff, so I haven't seen a Studio Ghibli movie that I didn't like, but My Neighbor Totoro was a favorite. I also watched Your Name because I did an episode of all my movies with Tony Revolori from Spider-Man and other great movies, Wes Anderson movies. He's in The French Dispatch and Grand Budapest Hotel, but he wanted to talk about Your Name, so I watched Your Name and I really enjoyed that. And then Spirited Away and Castle in the Sky. It's mostly Studio Ghibli stuff right now, and I've loved everything that I've seen. So that's I did an anime series where I was watching a lot of anime for the first time, and then because of the podcast or whatever else, it kind of got put to the side. I will resume that, at least watching it at some point, because I really, really liked what I was seeing, and also things like Demon Slayer. as I go through, and shows like Arcane and stuff that are recommended as well. I want to expose myself to more of that stuff because I really, really enjoyed what I've seen. Mara, is there anything anime that we've watched or that you've watched that I didn't mention?
I don't know. I was busy whipping meringue.
That's fine. That's fine. We watch a lot of it together, so we're kind of both joining into that. That
Attack
old
on Titan's
excuse.
final season is starting January 9th, Dan. So I think that would be a good one for you to like do like a season 1 review, a season 2 review, and season 3, and then like the final season, like where like the manga has already ended, and so the final season of the anime is coming up, and it's very, very good.
Okay, that's good to know. And there's more Demon Slayer coming up soon, so I'm excited for that. I think toward in next month, toward the end of the year. So yeah, there's so much stuff I need to catch up on. It's like I'm getting there. It's just a lot of. It's like juggling, you know. Something's got to drop at some point, but I'm trying to juggle everything. There's a couple of small stories before we wrap up the show that I wanted to talk about. So if you have questions that you wanted to get in, you still have a few minutes to get them in before we start to wrap everything up. We talk about streaming in the digital age and how weird it is with where everything is. And this is just another one of those stories that just goes to show you how complicated things are. If you've noticed, there are some conflicting Fox movies that either go back and forth, or parts of franchises like X-Men that are on HBO Max and then are on Disney Plus and then either go back to HBO Max or are missing. And that's because Fox had a contract with HBO through, I think, 2022 to have their movies on HBO, but then Fox got bought by Disney, and of course they want to put a lot of their movies on Disney Plus. And so there's been this back and forth. It happens with the Harry Potter movies too. You'll see they'll go to HBO Max, and then they'll go to Peacock, and then they'll go back to HBO Max, and then they'll go to Peacock. It's because you have these sort of legacy contracts. Muffin's eating the wrapping paper. Muffin, don't eat that. Hey, be good. Sorry, I didn't want. Don't put your head in the box. Okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna close that up. There you go. Sorry, Muffin. We feed you wonderful food. You don't have to eat wrapping paper.
Oh my God, he's about to get even nicer food now because we're going to switch her onto a food. It comes primarily from rabbits, I think.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes me
It'd be a lot
sad.
cheaper to feed her wrapping paper, but it's not nutritious, you know. Not enough fiber.
She has pica, just like her mom. So
yeah.
I just eat
anyway.
ice.
So you see movies that go back and forth. This is a very weird arrangement. So HBO Max is going to have Fox movies for one last year, so going into 2022. However, they have struck an unusual deal that they're going to share the streaming window for a lot of their movies with Disney Plus and Hulu for about half of the studio's titles. And the first one that you're going to see is the movie Ron's Gone Wrong, which comes out next month. That was a Legacy Fox animated film that didn't do great numbers in theaters, but it also has that abbreviated theatrical window, and it's actually held up pretty well over the last few weeks. But instead of having it go from one service to another, under the new agreement, HBO and HBO Max will share co-exclusive rights with Disney Plus and Hulu to a selection of titles from 20th Century Studios and Searchlight Pictures. HBO and HBO Max will retain Pay One TV window exclusivity on about half the slate through 2022. Ron's Gone Wrong is going to premiere on both HBO Max and Disney Plus on December 15th. So usually, I mean, the key to so many of these services is exclusive rights to certain movies, etc. This is one of the ways that they're getting around these crazy contracts. Now, once this contract runs out, then all the Fox stuff is going to be on the Disney streaming services, or if it's not appropriate for Hulu or for some reason, or if it's not appropriate for Disney Plus, then they may license out individual films. But this sort of blanket agreement, you're not going to see anymore. But this is something, if you get confused and you're going on to HBO Max and Disney Plus and you see some movies on both streamers for the next year, that's because they've hammered out a deal where they both get the rights. So good news if you want to see Ron's Gone Wrong. You've doubled your chances. Whether you have Disney Plus or HBO Max, you can catch it on both services starting next month, and you're going to see that happening here over the next year or so for a select number of titles also on Hulu. So keep that in mind as we kind of navigate the final days of these legacy contracts. Eventually, someday, I think all the Harry Potter movies are going to live on Peacock because that's who owns the rights, but because of the dueling rights, they would probably live on HBO Max because they're Warner Brothers films. But because of the dueling rights, they just keep getting kind of back and forth, back and forth. It's like having two Christmases. You're just going from house to house. Eventually, they're going to live at their parent companies. But yeah, this is another example of just kind of weird economy that we're living in. Another thing that we talk about, just as far as things changing, one major Hollywood release, we've talked about this on Charting, that there are a lot of films that are not getting releases in China, which was a lucrative market for Hollywood films, but they have to pass muster and get actual release dates in China, which have been very hard to come by. One movie that will be screened in China is The Matrix Resurrections. It reportedly has passed censorship in China, so it will get a release theatrically in that country. However, there is a big movie that unconfirmed reports are saying will not get released in China, and that is Venom: Let There Be Carnage. I have been anticipating when this China release is going to come because the first Venom movie did $250 million in China. I think China was the #1 market in the world for that film, and so the assumption was that Venom: Let There Be Carnage would do big numbers, maybe do the best out of any Hollywood movie in China this year. Now, I cannot find a confirmed report from a established media source. There is a box office analyst named Oliver Chen. Other outlets online have picked up the story, but I have not gotten an official confirmation. But a box office analyst named Oliver Chen has reported that Venom: Let There Be Carnage has been banned in China. Now, this could turn out, perhaps, I would take this as an unconfirmed report. An unconfirmed report that Venom: Let There Be Carnage has been banned in China. If this does turn out to be the case, this is a huge blow, obviously, to Venom: Let There Be Carnage. Also to Sony, because I'm sure they were probably anticipating a large chunk of box office change from the Chinese box office. However, we've seen that these censorship boards are getting more restrictive. It does not look like Eternals will be coming out in China. It does not look like Black Widow will be coming out in China. It does not look like Shang-Chi will be coming out in China. Jungle Cruise had a much delayed release date. It's made next to nothing in China because it was so readily available elsewhere. We really are seeing a crackdown, a clampdown on the part of the Chinese government largely for Hollywood films in favor of domestic films from the Chinese marketplace. And the censorship is getting much more strict. So
I mean, is it just about preserving like the economy of the Chinese marketplace for film, or is there like a content reason why? Do you have any idea? Like what questionable content is there in Venom: Let There Be Carnage for the conservative Chinese government? I don't get it.
Well, there is a I mean, I don't want to go too much into it, but the nature of one of the romantic relationships in the movie, and I don't mean between Eddie and Venom, but there is an aspect to that relationship that the government, reportedly potentially has an issue with. Of course, one of the reasons that Eternals was likely banned in China and was banned in other countries is because there's an openly gay character. There's a list of things that are kind of no-nos in China, and also if you look at the marketing in China and the fact of John Boyega's diminishment on the Chinese marketing for The Force Awakens, some of these reasons are inexcusable, but that's just the reality of it. So again, these are unconfirmed reports, so I can't really go into exactly why. I don't. Again, this is all speculation. If this happened, I can't say exactly why, but this is speculation as to why it would have happened.
But we're going to talk offline about that because that's a big false equivalency because there are other movies that have a similar type of relationship.
That's why I'm not saying this is why it happened. I'm just saying that's the speculation.
I'm just saying, hypothetically speaking. That would be that would be a big double standard and would say a lot more than they think it says.
I agree. I don't want to violate my own standards by, I'm not saying get the pitchforks out. Again, this is all speculation, and again, this is an unconfirmed report. But yeah, it's a concern for Hollywood because there are more and more now instances where films are just not getting release dates. I think part of it also, the market is a little bit limited. There are still effects from the COVID-19 pandemic that are happening in China as they are happening worldwide. And I think the thinking from the Chinese government also is if people are limiting what movies they see, then we want to make sure that people are going to see movies from China and not movies from Hollywood, because we want the Chinese film market to recover. And we don't necessarily want that market recovery to also assist the United States. So there's a lot of different factors that go into this. But yeah, an unconfirmed report that Venom: Let There Be Carnage may not be getting a Chinese release date. I will be trying to track that and get confirmation. Perhaps by the time Charts comes out next Monday, then you will be able to we will be able to confirm,
Charts going
or at least
to come out on Monday because of our
That's a good
trip?
question. I think it may still come out on Monday. We just may release it on Sunday again. But yeah, okay. We will be on the road again all day Monday. So charts will probably be recorded on Sunday. One last story, and this is exciting. There is a new addition to the cast of Marvel's Blade, which has yet to go into production, but is heavily into pre-production. Reportedly, Delroy Lindo has joined the cast in an unnamed role. Of course, there's always speculation about who he's going to be. We know that Mahershala Ali is in the film. Delroy Lindo also reportedly going to be in the movie. Listen, if it was just a two-hander between these two, if they were the only two cast members in the movie, sign me. I'm already ready. I think Mahershala Ali is great casting. If Delroy Lindo's in there too, great. I would watch the two of them just sit in a room and talk for 2 hours.
He would be such a great whistler.
Oh, he would be a great whistler. Yeah. So that's a fun addition to Blade.
One of the most important things about Whistler is that he doesn't put up with Blade's stuff. I was going to say a different word, and he can absolutely play that part to an actor like Mahershala Ali.
Yeah, he definitely could. So that's a fun addition to the cast. And just kind of a fun thing to take as our last topic for the show. Just some excitement here. Some excitement for Blade and the fact that, let's hope Delroy Lindo signs on the dotted line. This was reported as final talks, so let's hope he signs up for that film. It looks like we have a couple of final questions before we sign off. A new guy says, I don't know if it's streaming anywhere, but I really enjoyed Weathering with You. Yeah, I remember covering that on Charts when that came out. There was a lot of... it did well at the worldwide box office, and I remember seeing that name. So that's another one that I've seen recommended, Weathering with You. That's a great one to add to the list. This is a donation. Let's see. Is there a name attached to this one? Is this from the same person, Ben? Are these both from a new guy, the Weathering with You ones? Weathering with You is an anime movie by the same person who made Your Name, which was a huge box office movie. I think it dethroned Spirited Away's anime worldwide box office crown in 2016. That's a big that was a big box office hit. Yes, thank you, Ben. Those are both from a new guy. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah, Weathering with You, I saw a lot on Charts when it came out. And it looks like our final question is going to be from Joey. Thank you, Joey. Thoughts on the stylistic departure with Last Night in Soho? I enjoyed it, but it didn't feel like an Edgar Wright film to me. I still wonder what his Ant-Man movie would have been like, too. I agree, and I was always very sad that Edgar Wright didn't get to make his Ant-Man movie. I know he was very excited to do that. As far as Last Night in Soho, and I said this in my review, it's not my favorite movie in his filmography, but what I love about Edgar Wright is he continues to show a lot of growth as a filmmaker, and he's not afraid to try new things. Baby Driver, I think, was a departure from what he's done. He's done action sequences before, but as far as a pure action film, I think that Baby Driver was something new for him, and I liked what he did in Last Night in Soho. I wasn't in love with the movie itself. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. But what I really like, because I think that he is one of my favorite directors, probably top 5 working right now for sure. As I bumped the camera, I love that he keeps experimenting and trying new things, and part of it is that you sometimes. It's a little too much of a departure. Sometimes it takes audiences a little while to appreciate the departure from style. I think something that we do a lot right now is to judge directors as they are currently working, as if their filmography is altered film by film. And part of it is that filmmakers' legacies often aren't written until their filmography is complete, or until they're older and they're making fewer films, or until you have enough films to really stand back and judge it as a whole, unless you have a very limited filmography. But I think even Kubrick's filmography has sort of been recontextualized and reassessed over the years. And so I think that Last Night in Soho is probably going to be informed as much by the films that Edgar Wright makes next as by the ones that he made before. But I appreciate the fact that he's still out there. He's trying new things. He's playing with style. He's playing with genre. And I look forward to his next one, because I never quite know what to expect from him. And I think that's always exciting. I feel the same way about Paul Thomas Anderson. I don't know what to expect from him, from each individual movie. And that's exciting. I'll take that over predictability any day.
I agree.
Jim 1, I think this will be the final question. Jim 1 says, with the Celestials, Sacred Timeline, and Multiverse being introduced, do you think the MCU risks being too convoluted for casual and new fans to follow? Even for me, it's now harder to keep up with all the Disney Plus shows on top of the 3+ movies a year. Yeah, I mean, that's one of my biggest concerns because the MCU, they had little missteps, little tiny inconsistencies like the Infinity Gauntlet in the first Thor movie and the little timing issue with Spider-Man Homecoming as far as how many years later was it. But generally, they were able to make it all fit together in a broader sense. And a lot of it was retconning things, and that largely worked as well, I think. The thing with the MCU now here is the Celestials are so huge, and Loki, which is the sacred timeline, and now the multiverse is like, these all seem like very huge things that alone would be like very big picture things of like how everything works. So I agree, the same thing is like, how do you make all of this marry together? How do you make the idea of a multiverse and also a sacred timeline merge together? And the idea of like this big event that happens with Doctor Strange and Spider-Man No Way Home, and this big event that we saw in Loki, are they somehow tied together? And add on to the fact, the idea of like the reality altering abilities of Wanda. These are all such huge things. Are you introducing too much at once? That's a question that I have, and I don't know. I do share your concern there, because I think that. Go ahead.
Given preference, I wish they would have just gone back to small stories and built up another big universe, because it would have been able to bring in new people immediately, because they could have referenced things from the first from the Infinity Saga, and then people would have been like, oh, I should go back and watch that, or oh, I know that thing from that thing. But I mean, it just seems like they're going so big. Where can they go from here? Like, it feels like we're 2 films away from another Infinity War stakes movie, like things getting so big so fast, and it doesn't feel earned this time.
Yeah, I worry that they kind of fell into a trap where, God,
it's a trap.
I gotta figure that out. Pumping the camera again. I feel like they got so big that they fell into this trap of like, well, we're already at this level, so we can't go back down to a small level. And I think you can, actually. I think you can.
I agree.
But, you know, we'll see.
No, my hands are now dyed red. By the way, I didn't realize that I got Iron Man food coloring. This is Hot Rod Red.
Ooh, Hot Rod Red. I like it. Yeah, so I think that's our last question, and that's our last topic on the show. So we're a little bit shorter than we have been, but that's all right. I know that everybody is getting ready for the holiday. We are certainly getting ready for the holiday, and I'm getting movies in, etc. So there's a lot going on. Ben, thank you so much for pushing the buttons. Jump in here if there's anything that you want to plug. Mara, is there anything that you would like to plug?
Yeah, I think that I have made maybe too much royal icing. It's possible.
Oh, no. What are we going to do?
I don't know. I would love to
hook it up to my veins. Sorry.
I would like to plug your local food pantries. It's easy sometimes to forget how incredibly fortunate many of us are. Or if you are someone who struggles with food scarcity in a time of year that is about gathering with family and indulging while thinking about what we're grateful for, don't be afraid to ask for help or to seek out your local food pantry. But supporting those kinds of institutions helps to make this season special for everyone. So that's what I would encourage people to do.
Agreed. I think that's a great plug. Yes, food security is something that so many people struggle with now more than ever. So I know that food pantries don't just need your money and your donations right around Thanksgiving. They can use them not even just during the holiday season.
Yeah,
they can use them all year
long.
round, but especially here around Thanksgiving and Christmas and Hanukkah and all of the other holidays that are celebrated during the holiday season. Everyone should be able to have a nice meal with their family or with their friends or whomever they choose to gather with. So I know that those food pantries appreciate those donations. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Have a very safe Thanksgiving here in the U.S. and abroad where you're celebrating. Have a very safe rest of the week. Stay tuned. House of Gucci, the review will be up here on the channel tomorrow, and then charts will be coming up upcoming. Big holiday movies, and Encanto is out, and Resident Evil is not going to do a whole lot of business, but we'll talk about it anyway. House of Gucci's coming up. I'm curious to see what Ghostbusters Afterlife is going to do. Lots of things to cover. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thanks to everybody who asked a question, sent in a donation. You've all been very generous. It's always wonderful hearing your questions and what you have to say. We will be back next week. I don't know what day, because we're actually traveling next Wednesday. So we may be doing this show next Tuesday, so stay tuned for announcements on that. And then the week after that, we're traveling on Wednesday again, so we have to figure that out. But stay tuned. We'll let you know. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.
Bye.